Sorry, this is Kevin here at the Manchester VA. Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand on this thing.
Okay.
Hey, I guess I'm curious. You know, we've done a lot of team training and coaching. Do you find um, the need for team training greater in organizations with a highly matrixed reporting environment versus maybe some of the traditional organization structure of everybody reporting to, a single, throughout a single unit? I'm just kind of curious if you've seen any trends one way or the other.
So your question around, is there more need in a matrix rather than a hierarchical structure? I think I would approach that as there might be a slightly different need, but each of them has a need for a lot of reasons. In a matrix scenario, the ability to, which is true in healthcare, a lot of the projects, and you have interdisciplinary teams who are coming together focusing on CHR, HRO and these kind of things. So knowing exactly what Amy talked about, how do you establish trust quickly? How do you establish ways of working? How do you understand different styles and what a teamwork cycle is? What are the modes of operating in order to get to a result? So those don't exist naturally as they do in a hierarchical team that's been existing and is approaching something new. So that's my first pass. Happy to for other
Thank you,
thoughts.
Petra. Amy, anything to add to that?
I think so much depends on the dynamic within each organization that we're talking about. I think it's hard to sort of say it's always this way or that way with matrix or hierarchical. There's opportunity, there's always leadership gaps along the way that just have to be looked at on an individual case-by-case basis.
Kevin, my experience with matrix teams is because individuals sit on several teams and they cross over with their different reporting lines, whether it's solid or dotted. One of the pieces that we're finding is that the standard protocols need to be the same for teaming, Kevin. So if you have a team charter, that teams start their charters the same way and have the same boxes to fill in, if you will, when beginning a team. If they're using particular meeting, decision-making, or accountability tools, that those tools are the same. So when the managers, the matrix managers, move from their different teams, they step into teams where the experience and the ways of working are similar, and they're not trying to learn new ways of working or different tools going from team to team. So that's been, and working with one large nonprofit here in Boston, that was one of the things that really increased their efficiency and their effectiveness, is that standardization of protocols across teams.
I would agree with that, Alexander, and also add just language, leadership language across the board, being unified and consistent with everyone in the organization, I think really helps and adds to better teaming relationships across the board.
I see a question from Courtney in chat, Amy and Petra, and the question is, were you met with any resistance among members or leadership on the teams you worked with, and how did you navigate? And the secondary question, were the sessions mandatory or voluntary?
All right, sure. I can keep the order going if that's helpful. And there's the idea of resistance among members or leadership. For any change to happen, there has to be some level of readiness. If that's not already occurring at the team level, the leadership sets the tone and sets the environment that makes this, we want to do this for increasing team effectiveness, or we care about you and we want this to work better so that you're enjoying coming. So we work with the leaders on how to frame genuinely, authentically. And sometimes that's part of that orientation change. And so typically at that point, once we've gone through that initial framing stage, then it's something that people look forward to. And so even in the first session, there might be some neutrality of, okay, I'm going to wait and see if I like this or if I want to do any more of this. So usually after that experience, there's really a lot of buy-in from the participants. The question around mandatory and voluntary compliance, making something mandatory results in compliance. Making something opt-in results in commitment, is my simplest way of putting it. So there's a both and of saying, yeah, this is for your benefit. So it's really important that you're here. So it's a way of framing. That's mine. Amy, how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll just add a little bit. And that is, when I work with leaders, it's about them being courageous, right? Being courageous to be vulnerable, because to your point, Petra, they set the stage, they set the tone, they show the uncomfortableness, and we talk about that, right? And often I work with leaders one-on-one first, and then within the larger setting as well. but they have to take the lead. They have to be willing to be vulnerable. And in terms of mandatory, oof, we don't really work with those words. We create the space for safety, and there's got to be a commitment to building that safe space because we all have that common goal, and it's getting everyone along that way. And it takes work, commitment, trust, and courage.
And I totally agree with both panelists. Of just an experience I had with one team that they were kind of clammed up. Wasn't a lot going on until the leader was willing to show some vulnerability, and he demonstrated that vulnerability, and all of a sudden the door opened, and people then were much more willing to share or take risks and share some of the things they had in their minds. The other thing is that it takes time to build trust among the team when you're a coach, because they haven't seen you before, and sometimes it takes a couple meetings, and they see that there's this level of consistency, safety, you're honoring confidentiality standards on the team, and that also you earn that trust over time.
And Courtney, I would add that at Corentus, we spend quite a bit of time up front before we engage with the team in what we call making moves with the team and intervening by doing interviews. So we'll do one-on-one interviews, either in person or through Zoom, get to know them, share a bit about us, build that rapport. After the interviews, we like to be invited to observe a few sessions, introduce ourselves, and just observe so they get comfortable with us being in the room. There's this notion of getting comfortable with an observer, with somebody who's accompanying you. And then our first moves, when we intervene, we keep it light. We'll focus on strengths. We'll make a couple moves that are typically geared towards building awareness in self-observation, bringing in some simple tools. So there's a ramp up before we go into really starting to work with the team on deeper issues.
I just want to add one more thing, Alex, towards
Please.
the comment on mandatory. And that is that we meet people where they're at, and we start there. We don't come in with a whole program and push. We meet them where they're at, and we take that for everything, all the value in that current space that they are. And that's where we start the work.
Yeah.
So I hope that sort of articulates it even more.
Well said.
I will add one nugget to build on what Amy just said as well, which that's a key distinction between a training and coaching modalities that it's very customized and personalized to what is true for the team. And as Alexander said, that trying not to do things outside of the work. How do we make it experiential and practical inside of the real work, the real team meetings, the real work that they are doing, rather than saying, okay, put everything on hold. Now we're going to go over here and learn some abstract concept and leave it to them to figure out how to integrate. That's not effective. And so just want to make that really clear.
How you approached recommendations to the group, or is it mostly guided self-realization? What a great question. Petra or Amy, you want to tackle that one? We have about 4 minutes left.
I feel like you might be a great one to start with that, Alexander.
Yeah, so I love the question because there's a certain portion of team coaching which is self-realization. Through the feeding back of data and insights and through inquiry, like what are you noticing right now? What patterns are occurring right now? What is occurring to you as you try to make this decision? They're building the muscle of self-observation, which creates self-awareness, which creates the ability to self-regulate. Every once in a while, though, it is important for us to make recommendations and put on that consulting hat and say, my experience would say other teams I've seen have done, and to introduce a practice, a tool, or way of working, or a method that might be helpful for them. And even to then put a facilitator hat on and say, perhaps I could help you work through this today, or facilitate it for you one go and see what you do with it after. So we put on these different hats that are fit for purpose in the moment and that allow us to really flex and pivot in the moment to provide for the team what they need. We can't just stay in the inquiry data feedback position because the team may not know what to do with it. And they may find themselves at a loss, in which case we're not going to go anywhere with that. And it'll create frustration and even perhaps a bit of cynicism and skepticism about the process.
A comment, Alexander, that for those of you who are leading teams or on teams for that matter, if you're curious about coaching, I must say, I was not, when I was back in a position of making the decision, I was not all hepped up about trying coaching until somebody that I knew and trusted suggested it. And once I did, it made a world of difference to me and to others around me. So I just encourage you, if you're curious, do some research on it, and think about how it might help you on your teams. And there may be some issues that come out that it would help solve, or there may be some ways your team could be more effective. And there's always ways, but coaching is one of those mechanisms that you can use, one of those tools you can use for that purpose.
Excellent. Okay, I think we're out of the Q&A, Peter.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We've enjoyed these presentations today and hope you have as well. We're grateful to have had the opportunity to be here with each of you. And please know that each of the panelists is ready and willing to help you answer any questions you have at any time. You've got our contact information. And thank you, Mark, for making this possible for us. Appreciate it very much.